So it's time for another Taking the Biz A-level business tutorial, and this video is going to examine the factors that managers will consider when deciding which nations to base their production operations in. So obviously one of the most common factors that students are going to want to write about in exams when they're debating the issues that managers need to weigh up when deciding where to base production around the globe is of course the cost of production. So managers might need to think about how much will it cost to rent or buy land in this country? How much will it cost to develop or build the production facility that we need in this country? And then there is the big one. What will labour costs be like in this country? How much will workers be expected to be paid? What will be the cost of our labour force if we move to this country? Now, we may think that this is the most important factor for firms and that they will all be drawn to nations where production costs are the lowest, but that may not be the case. There are lots of other factors to consider when deciding where might be best to produce in. So another important factor is not just the cost of labour, but other labour market issues as well, such as how available is labour going to be in different countries? Are there going to be a large supply of workers that might be willing to come and work in this organisation? Or is availability of labour more scarce? Is the population smaller? Or are rates of unemployment much lower? Might the business find it difficult to recruit workers in the numbers that it might require? And just as importantly, what kind of skills are these workers going to have? A country might be a cheap place to go and produce in, but the business might require workers with certain skill sets. And while some countries might be able to deliver the employees with these skills, others may not in sufficient quantity. So it's not all about cost when deciding where to base production. Labour market issues and the availability and the skills of workers is also as important, just as infrastructure can be. Does this country have cities or towns with populations big enough to sustain an overseas business that wishes to produce there? And if it does, what are other aspects of its infrastructure like? Will the business easily be able to transport the goods that it produces in this nation, either through that nation or back overseas to markets where they might be sold in? What is the airport network like in this country? What are the ports and the shipping networks like, or the rail network, or the roads and motorways where the business might be able to transport its goods through the country and over borders? So infrastructure is important, just as energy issues are important. Will the business be able to get the power that it needs to its production location? Will it be able to get the communications it needs, such as telephone systems, broadband networks that a business will rely on when it's producing overseas? Another factor that might be considered is whether any government incentives are available that might just sweeten the deal for a business looking to locate production in that country. Does the government provide any subsidies or any grants to overseas firms looking to invest in their economy? Do they provide any soft loans? Those are loans that are relatively low interest rates that the business might be able to benefit from. Does the government offer any tax relief to foreign businesses that might move to that nation, set up production bases and create employment in that economy? So government incentives, while perhaps not critical, might also play a role in deciding where to locate production. Political stability is also going to be an important consideration when deciding where to produce. Firms are naturally going to be cautious about investing potentially millions of pounds in a production facility in a nation that may not be politically stable, in nations where there might be outbreaks of civil unrest, civil disobedience, potentially even civil war. Then a company might find that it has to flee that nation. It might have to withdraw its workforce from overseas from that nation, shut down its production location, or it might find that it can no longer move goods that's produced in that country because of an outbreak of civil unrest. and so it makes it an unattractive place to want to go and produce. Similarly, if there's the threat of terror attacks, then a country is going to be a less attractive place to want to go and produce in. Or if a country is prone to human rights violations, then again a business is going to be very cautious about wanting to go and produce in a country that has that kind of issue. Financially, the return on investment that a business might get from different markets is going to be closely scrutinised as well. Businesses are going to have to weigh up the cost of producing in that country versus the level of output they think they can achieve and the value of the goods that they might be able to create in that country, and decide what kind of return the business is going to get if it invests in a production facility in that nation. And one of the key drivers of choosing where to produce is balancing up cost versus the quality and quantity of what can be produced, and deciding what kind of return the business is going to get on the investment it makes in that nation. One thing that can lower the cost of production and make a country an attractive place to want to locate production is the natural resources that might be available. Sometimes businesses are attracted to producing in nations where they can get the natural resources that they need in order to fuel their production processes. So some businesses are very reliant on certain raw materials, whether it be gas or wood or types of metals or minerals, and if they can locate closer to those natural resources, it trims down the costs of producing their goods and services, and it makes a country a more attractive place to want to go and produce. The ease of business is also important as well. It was important when we looked at where businesses might want to go and sell in. It's equally as important when looking at which countries or economies a business might want to produce in. They want to base their production facilities, they want to invest in production facilities where the ease of doing business is the greatest. Businesses don't want to invest millions of pounds in production facilities in nations where doing business is difficult, where corruption might be rife, where government interference might be high, where the laws might be unfavourable to businesses or the tax rate might be unfavourable to businesses. So being based in a nation that is an easy place for businesses to thrive and succeed is another important consideration. And then there's the final one, whether a country might be a member of a trading bloc, a group of nations that trade freely with one another. A country might have the cheapest labour to offer a firm, or it might have the greatest availability of labour to offer a firm. But if it's not a member of a trading bloc, it might be a less desirable place to want to produce in. Because when a country bases production in a nation that's the member of a trading bloc, not only do they get to sell the goods that they've produced in that nation if they wish, without having to pay tariffs or be subject to quotas or other protectionist policies, but they can actually sell their goods anywhere in that nation's trading bloc just by producing in that country. So if they produce in a nation that is a member of the European Union, they actually have access, by having a production base in that nation, to the entire trading bloc without having to be restricted by the protectionist policies that that bloc might inflict on companies that do not produce within one of the borders of a trading bloc member. So there's a whole host of issues that might affect where a business decides to base its location. A common question might be for us to assess which one of these issues might be the most important to a firm. Hopefully that video will help you. We'll see you very soon. Keep on taking the biz.